Can you take a pill that will kill your soul? In the novel The Giver, people take a government-mandated pill to kill their emotions and desires. The pill also makes them colorblind and interferes with their memory. In the classic sci-fi novel Brave New World, authorities keep the population enslaved through a happiness-inducing pill called Soma. Published in 1886, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde tells the tale of a chemical serum that transforms the mild-mannered Dr. Jekyll into a murderous villain with no conscience and a thirst for blood. In the postmodernist novel Thus Spoke Zarathustra, the main character transcends the limited nature of man to become the Übermensch, the Overman. He says, "You must be ready to burn yourself in your own flame. How could you rise anew if you have not first become ashes?" According to Nietzsche, the author, the Overman makes himself into his own god by willing himself to become the standard of all value and meaning. He then declares, "God is dead." In all of these works, there's a fine line between cultivating human nature and destroying human nature. Human nature is an obstacle to be either buried or transformed or transcended, often with horrific consequences. But what is human nature? Humans are born with a heart, a brain, 2 eyes, 2 hands, but we're also born with certain inbuilt emotions, instincts, behaviors, desires, and intuitions. Why do you salivate when looking at a delicious meal? Why do you feel cleansed with water? Why are you repulsed by rotting flesh? Why do you want to hug and embrace loved ones? Are these things you learn from your culture? Not at all. These are natural reactions that all humans have. But beyond reactions and feelings, we also have natural intuitions. An intuition is a belief that you don't necessarily know you have, but how is that possible? How can you have beliefs that you are not consciously aware of? Imagine a little girl playing on a swing and a boy roughly pushes her off. What do you think about such an action? We all have a strong intuitive belief that the boy did something wrong. But where did that intuition come from? Did you have strong beliefs in your mind specifically about little boys pushing little girls off of swings? Probably not. Imagine looking at a table. On top of the table are many loose objects. Someone comes and violently moves the table. What do you expect to happen to all the loose objects? We all have a strong intuitive belief that they'll fly off. But where did that intuition come from? Did you have strong beliefs in your mind about how objects on a table behave when the table is moved? You might think that your expectation about the table is based on a lifetime of experiences with gravity. But psychologists have done this experiment with infants. They show infants a table with objects, and then the table is suddenly removed, but the researchers have rigged the objects so they remain stationary, suspended in the air. The infants watching this react non-verbally with surprise and shock. Why? In another experiment, they show young children a boy stealing an apple. Then the boy walks on a bridge that collapses. They ask the children, why did the bridge collapse? And the children overwhelmingly agree that it was because the boy stole the apple. These children come from a variety of religious and non-religious backgrounds, and none of them would even be able to articulate the belief that somehow morality can affect physical events like the collapse of a bridge. Nonetheless, they all share this intuition. It is said that there are no atheists in a foxhole. This is because in the heat of war, the atheist relies on his intuitions that God exists and can help him. So he calls out reflexively. Similarly for the atheist at sea, when the dark storm blows, tall waves batter his ship, and the watery grave beckons, the sailor cries out, "Oh God, save me." This is not because the atheist sailor consciously believed in God all along but kept it a secret. Rather, the belief in God is a deep human intuition that's not always conscious, but can nonetheless manifest itself in extreme situations.
People have hundreds and thousands of unconscious intuitions about everything. But is it true that all people are born with this intuition about the existence of God?
Despite the oppressive power of secularism, a surprising 80 to 90% of all human beings on the planet today still believe in God, even if many don't believe in organized religion. Not only that, but people across all developed cultures historically have a virtually identical concept of God. Yes, most religions are polytheistic, but except for a minority of small hunter and gatherer tribes, all civilizations, even the polytheistic ones, believed in a singular all-powerful God. Beyond the so-called Abrahamic faiths, even religions like Hinduism, Taoism, Confucianism, ancient Greco-Roman religion, despite all their differences, nonetheless share this universal notion of one supreme being who's created and maintained the universe. Justin Barrett, American psychologist, lists the primary characteristics of this universal notion of God. He's the all-knowing, all-powerful supreme being responsible for the creation of the universe. He has a mind, has a will, is immortal. He controls the past, present, and future. He created the universe for a purpose and has set a moral order. He communicates with people and rewards or punishes them. But he doesn't have a body and is invisible. How is it possible that so many people from so many different parts of the globe and at different times in history not only independently came to the same conclusion about the existence of God, but also agree on the primary attributes of God? It would be impossible for such alignment to arise purely by chance. The answer is human nature. Humans naturally are born with an intuitive God concept. Belief in God is ingrained in us as a species. It's a part of what makes us human, and this is the consensus in psychology and cognitive science.
Paul Bloom, professor at Yale, writes that the concept of a supreme being is natural. Deborah Kellerman, professor of psychology, even goes so far as to say that children are born intuitive theists.
What makes the God concept so naturally compelling to the human mind is that it is interconnected with other deep human emotions about the world. Causation is one example. From early childhood, we intuitively believe that nothing occurs without reason. Everything has a cause, and causes have their own causes, and so on in a causal chain. Anyone who's talked to children has experienced this firsthand. Your child asks you, "Why does it rain?" You reply, "Because the clouds release stored water." But why does that happen? Because the sun heats up water that turns it into steam that forms clouds. But why? Unless it's stopped, this questioning from children would continue indefinitely. We're born with this natural intuition to seek out ultimate causal ends.
This intuition about causation supports the notion of a supreme being, which is why many religions independently produced cosmological arguments as proof for the existence of God.
One ultimate cause is necessary to explain the existence of the universe. Humans also have innate intuitions about order and design. From childhood, we innately believe objects around us are purposefully created. When children in studies are asked about the origins of natural things like plants, animals, mountains, they recognize that these things are not man-made, but were made for a purpose. For example, flowers were made to make the world beautiful. Puppies were made to play with children, and so on. How can something both be made for a purpose, but not be man-made? For children, the answer is obvious. God made it.
Olivera Petrovich, Oxford researcher,
Tested Japanese and British children from ages 4 to 7 by showing them photos of natural objects and man-made objects. When the children were then asked questions about the origins of natural objects like mountains and animals, regardless of cultural or religious background, the children predominantly chose God as the answer. They did not give An agnostic answer, like nobody knows their origins, or an incorrect answer, like those things were made by people, they said that God was the creator. Petrovich called this result absolutely extraordinary because the Japanese Shinto religion doesn't include this idea of God creating anything. So how do Japanese children get the idea that creation is in God's hands when their religion and culture has no such teaching? The researchers also asked the children to describe God. We might expect that the children would give different descriptions of God based on their religious upbringing, but surprisingly, that wasn't the case. Children predominantly conceive of God as a person without a body, similar to notions of gas and air. Petrovich claims that children get the idea of God as man through their religious education, but no child naturally thinks of the creator of the world as a person with a body. It would be an astonishing vindication of Hinduism if children in Mexico raised by non-Hindu parents thought of God as a blue-skinned deity with an elephant head. It would be an astonishing vindication of Christianity if children in China raised by non-Christian parents thought of God as a Trinitarian deity. What children do think, regardless of cultural and religious background, is that the universe was created purposefully by one God without partners, one God who is ever-living, all-powerful, all-knowing, but does not have a bodily form. Where does this intuition come from?